Let's welcome Sheriffs J. Paul Parker and Steve Durfor. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'll give it to Steve.
Yeah, I don't know how to turn that one on, I don't think. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for yet another opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. And I don't know, I think I can probably dispense with who I am or my background and all of those things. We've known each other, I think most all of you here, for a very long time. But it has been on my heart in coming here, and certainly very aware that it's all fresh and foremost in the horror and the emotions that are certainly swirling around the activities of last week up in our foothills. So I just wanted to right now in my opening comments, if you would please, just kind of wade right in the front of the middle of this, and to let you know that if ever you had any question, and I don't doubt anybody in this room has, but if anybody in this room or in this county has ever wanted to have something that clearly illustrates the courage, the commitment, the passion, the absolute drive to do everything in their power to keep Yuba County and the Yuba Sutter area safe, it was exemplified by Deputy Bronson, Deputy Everhart, and Deputy Harris. And I want to thank all of you, and across the expanse of the Yuba Sutter area, and I kid you not, the entire state of California, and even states out of California, of the outpouring of thoughts, prayers, encouragement, wanting to know statuses. You want to talk about the solidarity of sheriffs in the state of California, that I will tell you, of the 57 sheriffs in the state of California, I am not kidding you when I tell you I'm quite confident that I have heard from at least 55 of them personally and directly. Wanting to extend any and every help that they can to lend us support. And the outpouring of our local law enforcement community in the Yuba Sutter area and even beyond in the greater region of the Yuba Sutter area, much of which they self-deployed upon hearing this call, in their commitment to ensuring that one of their own gets wounded or you get my point. I will tell you that we kind of jokingly I was talking to Under Sheriff Johnson up on the Hill, that the amount of resources that we had up there from law enforcement, I'm fairly certain we could have overthrown Vladimir Putin and taken over Russia. We went well past a small third world country. I mean, we were getting it on up there. So, but I want you guys to all know, I understand, folks, every one of you, the emotion, the rage, the outcry. But I want to give you an update as far as where we stand. Deputy Bronson has gone home. On Friday, he went home. Deputy Everhart has been, I was learned today, has been downgraded to a lesser than ICU room. He will be in the hospital for a bit longer. And they are going to make it. They are going to make it. Now, what I want to also say to you folks as well is that some of my comments, I'm going to try to be brief and I want to be succinct. And I pray that any of you here don't walk away with this of here's Sheriff Durfor standing up here and throwing excuses our way as to what's going on. I believe that in light of what has happened on Tuesday morning, that there's a number of questions. What are we doing about marijuana? Why are you not doing anything about marijuana has been shot my direction as well. It has been inferred, if not outright said to me by some, that we have perhaps even been indifferent to the marijuana problem. That is the furthest from the truth. So let me explain to you as to what we have done. And guys, keep this in mind. I am not at all minimizing what happened. You are absolutely correct. The originating call for service that led Deputy Bronson, Everhart, and Harris to that site was a complaint about an individual damaging their marijuana plants. That scenario could have just as easily also been, I need a deputy here because I have an individual damaging my car, or damaging my lawnmower, or it's over the dog that won't stop barking at all hours of the night. And we have seen those incidences that have drawn into ridiculous levels of violence over nothing. I can't speak to why this deranged individual decided to get into an absolute hell-on gun battle with 2 armed deputies, and a third one right outside the door. Can't speak to that as of yet, and this is an ongoing investigation, and I can assure you that no expense, no resources being spared in ferreting this thing out to its fullest extent and any and all of the activities associated around this incident. But what I do also want to point out to you is that you need to understand, those of you that reside in Yuba County, the absolute mission-critical staffing levels that we have, not only on patrol, but in dispatch, in many aspects in the jail, and including over at Animal Care Services. Just a few months ago, we literally were at a crisis level where we put a moratorium on all time off of anyone that was a peace officer in the Yuba County Sheriff's Department. We have 45 allocated positions that are dedicated to patrolling the streets of Yuba County, the entire expanse of the unincorporated area of this county. Just a few short months ago, we had 22 that were actually 10-8 working. And that's counting our vacancies. That's counting a large number of them that were out on workers' comp or other FMLA-type leaves. And again, it's a very protracted process for us to hire deputies. Now, I will tell you, up until Tuesday morning of last week, we had gotten that number back up to 31. In light of last week's events, we're back down to 29. So I'm going to tell you, despite those staffing levels, keep this in mind, unlike some of our neighboring counties that have a full-time team dedicated to nothing but marijuana enforcement in Yuba County, that is desirous, that is something that we have asked for, that is something that we have presented in the past. The reality is now, guys, the base function of keeping this county safe and keeping you safe, which is our absolute highest priority, it has literally been at critical levels. But despite all of those staffing levels I just described to you, I will tell you that in 2016 and year-to-date in 2017, we have had record levels of eradicating weed under criminal search warrants that these guys are doing on overtime, on their days off, and fitting it in wherever they can in between handling your other needs that you demand of your law enforcement people in Yuba County. And to illustrate the point, right now as we stand here heading into 27, and we're not even at the peak of the grow season, we're getting close, we have eradicated just slightly under 25,000 marijuana plants under criminal search warrants that have been ripped out of the earth in Yuba County. We have seized around $150,000 from these varying individuals. There have been a multitude of arrests, numerous guns taken, and 3 BHO labs this year. I can tell you that last year we executed 60 arrests, close to 20,000 plants that were pulled out of the ground, 25 search warrants, and we also handled and investigated 12 BHO labs last year as well. This is in addition to everything else you're asking of your sheriff's department to do for you. Now, is there a need to have a stronger commitment to marijuana enforcement? Absolutely. But you need to understand the fiscal constraints that Yuba County has been under since we all experienced the Second Great Depression. I will tell you that every year for the last 9 years, I have had hits in excess of $1 million every year that I need to figure out just how to absorb. Do you want to know what the nut was that I had to figure out how to cover for fiscal year 17-18? Maybe to illustrate the point that economically as a county, we have not quite recovered where many other jurisdictions have. I was asked to figure out how to handle $3.2 million. The reality is, folks, every ounce of creativity, every ounce of squeezing staffing to try to make those cuts and to absorb it, knowing that there's scarce general fund revenues that can backfill and to continue to subsidize our operations, is not there. We still need an assessor's office. We still need a treasurer's office. We need a county council. We need all of those things. Now, I will tell you, it's been asked of me is, why do you continue to want to rely on the state? There is no reliance on the state of California to enforce weed. There is no entity that exists in California that we can go to for assistance in our problems. The only thing that is left that is scarcely holding up is CAMP, the Campaign Against Marijuana Plantations. We have an MOU with them every year. They don't work cases from the front end. We have no problems, folks, having ample resources, maybe even too many resources, to go in and to actually eradicate and to safely enter a garden and to eradicate those plants. That is not what camp does. They're a force multiplier when you have a search warrant and you've worked the case up on the front end. And working those things criminally can be very complex. And there's a differentiation, folks, between what is a criminal case and the way that things have happened in California. Prop 215 is still well alive. And Prop 64, again, the comments about the state of Jefferson, I get it. Statewide ballot initiatives, your future, your destiny, what you like or you don't like is being decided out of Southern California and the Bay Area. End of story. And I think that we're a little bit different thinking up here than elsewhere in the state. But that is the reality that we are in. The other thing is that why am I not going straight to the federal government? I will tell you, year after year, we have tried to feed a number of cases to DEA. Under the previous administration in Washington, D.C., they had a very much hands-off approach to anything that a state has passed, compassionate use act issues. A very high threshold in order to get them even remotely interested in those cases. And I got to tell you, despite the numerous cases that we felt there was clear indicators of interstate trafficking and money laundering, and take your pick of those, not a single case was adopted by the DEA. We maybe at best got an initial inquiry or an interest in hearing what it's about. They did not adopt a single case. I will tell you that today we have several cases go on, or a handful. I don't want to over-exaggerate my point. There are a handful of cases the DEA has expressed interest, and there are some that they are working lockstep with us in moving those investigations forward. Now, if there's a question as to why don't you have this team, why have you not asked for this team? Well, I will tell you, I've talked to you guys a number of times over the year. I can tell you I have it fresh and on top of my desk as we speak. And that is a memorandum and a submittal and a proposal that was presented to the Board of Supervisors in September of 2014, when it was asked at that time with the composition of that board, what is it you feel, Sheriff, you need? Code Enforcement, Jeremy Strang, what do you feel it is that you need in order to effectively go after the weed? We costed it out, we identified it, it's already on paper. Now, if funds could be found in which to stand up a unit like that, it's going to take time for that to happen. It's a very protracted process in California to vet individuals to get the designation of being a peace officer. And I got to tell you, if they handed me the money right now in a suitcase to cover the whole cost, I guarantee you we're going to get well through the next grow season in 2018 before that team would be stood up. That's how long it's going to take with our staffing levels as critical as they are right now. It's not to mean that we shouldn't try. So, with that, guys, I mean, in light of tragedy, you do end up with individuals that do come up and entities that are saying, hey, is there anything that we can do? Is there anything we can help support you? And we are, Lieutenant Wendell Anderson, who's the chief of our detective unit, have talked several times since Tuesday. And there are individuals that are extending their hand to want to help what they can. And maybe even possibly, I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver to you, but directing some resources that may be of some assistance to us. And we'll take advantage of any and all of it that we can work out with those other agencies. But let me tell you, folks, know this. This is not a long-term solution. These people have responsibilities elsewhere. It's been asked of me, well, why don't you get a hold of Sheriff Honey up in Butte or Sheriff Royal up in Nevada County and have them come to Yuba County to work your weed? Why in the hell would they do that when they have an equally or greater problem than we do? That'd be like me standing in front of you right now saying, hey, guess what? All the Yuba County folks that are trained on doing weed, I sent them to Sheriff Honey's shop in Butte. They're working cases over there. I have a feeling that you would stone me to death, drag my bloody carcass out into the parking lot, and lock the doors on me. And it's the same for them. We are friends. They will help any way we can. We work with those teams constantly. When we have worked up a case, and we have an ops plan, and we have the warrant in hand. and we will continue to do those things and fight mightily. If anyone has any question in the county of Yuba of my commitment to the safety of my staff and the safety of this community, and I know I speak for every man, woman in the Yuba County Sheriff's Department, they're giving everything they got to meet every demand that you have and to keep you safe. Not only from marijuana growers, but from burglars and rapists and robbers and thieves and anything in between. So since I would feel bad if Paul had nothing to say at this meeting, I'm going to conclude now, guys. So I thank you for bearing with me, but I just felt it beneficial when we go to Q&A, you hear from me first. You want to pick that apart? You got anything that you want to talk after that? Please lay it on me. I will stay here till the very last man, woman has a question, even if we got to take it out in the parking lot in front of the headlights. Okay? So anyway, Paul, how about you?
Okay. Well, as you can see, Steve is very reserved and quiet and doesn't have very much to say, really.
I actually am by nature.
I get him stirred up earlier, so I'm sorry about that. Well, I'm Sheriff Parker. I live and work in the sleepy county of Sutter, and we don't have anything exciting going on right now. But we do have a lot of issues. And that's why I'm here tonight, is to talk to you folks about whatever type of issues that come up. Like Steve, I'll spare you the resume. I've been around a very long time. That's good enough. But any type of issues, and we usually never have a shortage of questions, so I'll just shut up right now and throw it to the crowd, and you can just start asking questions. Go ahead. They probably want, they want you to step up to the microphone so everybody can hear.
I would like to know, how can the community, as the people here, help you? I mean, is there a volunteer system? Tell us what we can do to help you.
Yeah, certainly, sir. We have a volunteer program called the STARS program. There's a few of them here tonight. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you to join with us. I mean, you are embedded in our law enforcement agency and supporting us any way we can. As reports to crime, whether it's marijuana grows or any other illegal activity, certainly we are the most effective when we have a strong partnership with all of you. Help us to multiply our eyes and ears out there. So again, back to the marijuana thing. If you're seeing grows, we will absolutely respect people's anonymity. Just point it, hey, you might want to pay attention to 1, 2, 3, whatever road. And we'll take it from there to the very extent that we can. Those are the real key issues. And being engaged in who we're electing as board members, who we're electing as sheriffs and DAs and moving into the future. You guys are the premier and the model of what we certainly would hope the voting populace would all strive to be. So those are just a couple of thoughts that come to my mind.
And I thank you very much for all your service and the things you do for us.
And I'll add to that a little bit that we're really quite spoiled in this area as far as law enforcement is concerned, in that we have a very positive pro-law enforcement populace. It's not, we go to meetings once a year and commiserate with the 58 other sheriffs in Sutter, in California. And we hear some of these horror stories, and we have a very positive pro-law enforcement community that we enjoy in the Yuba Sutter area, and Butte is the same way, I know, and Colusa and this general area. And so we are already supported by the citizens. We have citizen volunteers and cadet programs and neighborhood watch and all that kind of stuff, and that's fantastic. And they're really force multipliers for us. But just in general, how many other communities have business establishments that like make a pie for every cop that works in the Yuba Sutter area. I mean, can you imagine that happening in any place else other than up here? I mean, it's a local business. And they decide, you know what? We're going to just do something nice for the cops, and they make every single one of them, from the highway patrol to every sheriff and police department. They make them a pie. Here's a pie. Just thinking of you. Now that's positive. You know, that's you can't buy that. And so we're spoiled in this area. We really are. So, okay, Scott.
Thank you. I have a question just about the evacuation and the way that happened, okay? I heard it basically from a couple of different people that Sutter County is being evacuated, Yuba City is not being evacuated, and I just want to know if you guys were contacted by Sheriff Honey or from their departments, and if there was a progression that could have gone through. I was stuck on George Washington Boulevard trying to get out into 113 for 2 hours, and I finally just said, to hell with it, turned around and went home. I'm safer at my house than I am in my car, okay? So my question is really do we now have an evacuation plan where, you know, if you're south of Highway 20, you go south. If you're north of Highway 20, you go west, or, you know, is there some sort of a plan now to do that?
Great question, and I've actually got some personal feelings about this thing because I'll explain myself as to what I ended up doing with it. I mean, there had been some initial conversations and some ongoing conversations and more to be had amongst the law enforcement community in the Yuba Sutter area. We recognize that if there is a disaster or some significant crisis that's prompting an evacuation in Paul's side of the river, it impacts us and vice versa. And so certainly getting into the issues of having folks from Yuba trying to get across the bridge into Sutter County that's already being, you know, greatly impacted by gridlock, and then, you know, Yuba City folks trying to get into Marysville, which if you'd have just gone the other way, it'd have been better. So we are definitely trying to refine this. But if I may, let me address what happened on, what was that, February 12th, I think it was? That was an extraordinarily unique situation. Now, we are very accustomed in this area. I feel like I'm talking only to the first two rows. We are fairly accustomed in the Yuba Sutter area to the whole slow rise event. We've experienced it a number of times. We have trigger points that when water gets to this, we have time to plan. We have time to project. We know what releases are going to be. We know what projected rainfalls are going to be, and that we can tell, hey, we're going to get to this probably by 8 a.m. tomorrow. We're in an advisory mode. Now we're in a mandatory, or we're in a warning stage, and then it gets into the mandatory evacuations. This scenario, the way it happened, when we pulled the trigger to say you've got to put this out now, you need to notify the public that they need to get moving now, was the immediacy of a tremendous crisis and a tremendous risk. Now the question, sir, of hearing from Sheriff Honey, the very first call I received was from Sheriff Honey. He and I joke about the fact that to our great-grandkids someday, if we live that long, we'll tell them about the infamous 7-second phone call that we had that day. And I will tell you, his head was on fire, and he was succinct, he was to the point, and then he hung up on me. And I think my parting comment was, I'm on it. His comment was, Steve, this has gone to total crap, but he had a different word for that. He goes, I am telling you, there is an imminent failure, imminent, any second, of the emergency spillway. I am evacuating everything down below me. I strongly recommend you do the same now. That was what got me invited in my agency into this scenario. Now, I will tell you guys, and I've addressed this at some of the DWR meetings that we're talking about it. My decision personally, and ours collectively of the OES team at Yuba County, was put out that message now and get them moving. Because the way I was thinking, guys, I would rather be standing in front of you right now, taking questions as to, can you make this a better plan? And why did you inconvenience the hell out of me? And you created an amount of anxiety and panic in all of us, versus me standing in front of you saying, well, we waited an hour, 2, however long it takes, to deploy resources to get a contraflow program going, to be able to open up both areas to move. And then I'm having to stand, or a conference call, and now standing up in front of you saying, why did you wait and not tell us, and have to explain why how many thousands or whatever you fill in the blank, Yuba Sutter lives were lost. And my decision was, I'll take the heat for inconveniencing everyone, causing the panic and anxiety, but given that scenario, that was the call I made. And I'm telling you folks, it's the same call I'd make tomorrow. Because I'd rather stand on the courthouse steps and explain that than tell you we lost lives because we didn't act. And the sooner you get moving, the better off, the more lives we're going to be able to save. We knew, and I think Paul had a fair understanding too, we're going to create some serious traffic issues because it's happening now. So, but we are working on and continuing to look at our evacuation plans and trying to make it more efficient. Pray to God that scenario doesn't happen again. We are very good at doing the slow rise event and continuing to coordinate. So, and as that went on, guys, to know back behind the scenes, there were set established call-in conference calls with all the local entities in the Yuba Sutter area of us all coordinating status checks on where we are with each other and what we're planning on doing and how that may impact you. So there was a level of as we kind of got through that initial fog of war and making that happen.
If you've got, I can answer it from my perspective. If you get about 10 minutes, it'll take me. Like Steve said, we're pretty practiced at slow rise flood events. And the questions we're getting a lot now, not just on this, but how prepared are we on fast evolving events and as far as evacuation? And that was the biggest problem, the traffic and the choking off on evacuations. What happened on the whole confusion part is probably in hindsight probably worked to our advantage, but and I'll explain how. But if you recall, on the 12th, we were experiencing not only rain, but the river levels were up. But it had been raining and raining, and so the levees were all soggy. You recall that? And so we were watching those anyway. And on the 12th, there was no precursor, any thought that we were anywhere near any type of levee failing. And the dam had quite a bit of space in it, and the only abnormality that was going on was that their spillway had a hole in it at that time, which was only about that big, and probably as big as this room, but it looked small compared to everything else. And so but there was no thought that anything was going to happen, and even if the spillway was tore out, they could still get the water down. You know, when you get one of those messages that starts off with, "This is not a drill," you know that the information after that is never going to be good. And so we had just opened up the EOC out in Sutter, the Emergency Operations Center. We'd opened it up and we're actually talking about, well, maybe we don't need to really staff it or do anything with it right now because the rain is kind of up and down, but the levees are doing okay and the river's not rising right this minute. And then we get a frantic call from Butte and from Department of Water Resources that said that their big, long, 700-foot emergency spillway was in imminent danger of flopping over and collapsing. They thought it was being undercut and that it would flop over and release a 30-foot wall of water. The top 30 feet of the reservoir, which, as we all know, is a lot more water than the bottom 30 feet of a reservoir. And so there was no question as to we're going to have to call an evacuation. Now, Sutter County and Yuba City, they discussed it quickly between their two different emergency operation centers and said, yes, we're going to call an evacuation. Sutter County felt it was mandatory. Yuba City, upon reflection, decided to make it advisory. I really, in that type of situation, there's not really much difference other than you're notifying people. It's not like it's a mandatory evacuation and we're going to go start searching houses to make sure that everybody evacuated. That's not going to happen. The only difference in a mandatory evacuation is it keeps people from coming back in. And so that's what I have to say about why it was called. It was called because we got information that there was an imminent failure of the emergency spillway. That was based on input from the Department of Water Resources, which are the last ones that are going to say that it's going to fail if it isn't going to fail. So they have a vested interest in not saying things like that. So that was the information that we had on that. Now, as far as the evacuation, no matter how we do evacuations, you can only get so many cars down the roadway at any one time. And you could say, well, they could go out township and they can go out this and they can go out that, but that all feeds back into one. There's two roads out of here. There's 113 and 99, and that's it. You can go down 1,000 tributaries, but they're all going to pinch off into one, and eventually they go over a bridge, whether it's the Causeway Bridge or whatever, and it will get pinched down. So you can only move so many vehicles. So, in hindsight, that Sutter County started moving everybody out as a mandatory evacuation, and Yuba City started moving people out as an advisory, probably limited the clogging that could have happened. So it's going to take, no matter how well we plan it, it will take 6 hours to evacuate this place, unless we have 1 million buses all lined up and we can get a lot of people in. That's not going to happen. It's going to take 6 hours. Now, strangely enough, if the dam was to completely fail, 100% failure of the dam, it takes about 8 hours for the water to get here, 8 to 9 hours. And so we have plenty of time to get the people out as long as they don't panic. One of the worst things that can happen on evacuations are people panicking, getting in car wrecks. We've had shootings attached to them, people having heart attacks. And so you have to try to run these things, and they're very frustrating, and I know how it is, but shutting down lanes and not letting traffic go one way or another, that's just not going to work. You just have to manage the people out. It's going to take all day to get out. That's what happens when you try to run 100,000 cars over something that's meant to handle 10,000. And so we're going to do the best we can. We could smooth out some of the lumps, but it's always going to take a while to get it out. Okay.
My question is that could you guys, as law enforcement, use your helicopters and go over the areas up in the hills and see the grows and then have the officers on the ground to go bust them? Or do you have to have the complaints coming in?
No, every year, first of all, let me clarify, and I think I can speak for Paul. We don't own helicopters. I can't afford them.
I thought you did. Well,
yeah, we do have airplanes. We do not have helicopters. Quite honestly, right now, with our situation, I don't want one. I mean, the maintenance alone would break us. So I will tell you, but us getting helicopters has never been an issue. It is not a problem. We have contracts that we get service out of the National Guard. Butte County has a helicopter. We utilize theirs. The Highway Patrol has assisted us in the past. Getting flight time is never an issue. Every single grow season, we fly the county a number of times, and we GPS certain locations. Obviously, our focus point at the Sheriff's Department is on the bigger grows and those that obviously have the at least appearance of, outside of probably a 215. But I got to tell you, at times we get into those places and we find out that it may have 300-400 plants. It's entirely 215 compliant in the state of California. Now, with that said, we do fly, we do locate sites, and that ultimately information is used to help coordinate ground response to initiate the investigation. That happens every year.
because that's where I was wondering if you guys could
Yeah.
do that, or you had to have complaint, because I'd go down and find them to tell
Right.
you if I had to.
It's not a problem with us knowing where a vast majority, especially of the bigger ones, are. The honest answer, guys, is in large measure, I mean, and not at all to sound flippant, but we could fly the county one time, and if it was properly planned in the grow season, we would have enough identified targets to keep 2 full-time teams dedicated to nothing but marijuana for probably 2 years.
And what about the National Guard? Could you bring them in to assist you?
Well,
Like
I
the
mean, that takes the
military?
governor to direct that. I don't believe that's going to happen in order to enforce a law that California has, enacted on something like this. Now, there is a branch of the National Guard resources that have at times been assisting us, again, once we have a case worked up to begin with, in order to be kind of, again, more bodies, more personnel to safely get into that garden and then but that is their role. Clearly support personnel and a force multiplier for us.
And the answer is we get no help from the state whatsoever on this, almost at all. In the federal level, they had the DEA. On the state level, they had the BNE, the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement. That was disbanded right after Uncle Jerry got elected. And there is no BNE. There is no Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement in California, period. There isn't one. He just wiped it off the books. And so they've got, investigators that work lottery, and ABC and things like that, but nothing for narcotics.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Gary Kim, and I live in Sutter County. Before I change the subject completely, I just want to personally thank you guys for being here tonight, giving us your information, and taking our feelings and questions. That's very valuable to all of us. I'm aware of a trend, and I don't think it can go anywhere good, and it's in our neighborhood, Sheriff Parker. I run the Twin Cities Rod and Gun Club on 2nd Street, the shooting range there. It's the Sutter County Public Range, and we spend a great deal of time and some money there getting it going. And of course, you have your operation down at the end of the road at Whitaker Hall. And I understand that there are plans that they're going to turn over Whitaker Hall to some sort of it's a homeless center of some sort. It's going to provide some level of support, and I don't know exactly what other than showers and hot meals. And it's a very benevolent gesture, and I think it shows that Sutter County is going to try and do something for an obviously serious problem. The other side of that, though, is that I'm beginning to see campers now lined up along my fence next to an active shooting range, and they have no water, no electricity, and I dread to think of what's happened to the black and gray water. And I have notified somebody on the county website, possibly code enforcement, but I've heard nothing, I've seen nothing for 2 weeks, and I think that that's just the first step. As they get closer and closer to realizing that there's going to be something for them, that road, I think, could become unusable. Is there anything that's being done to plan for that? And I'll step back and take my answer.
Well, that's the thorniest issue that we've got going in Sutter County right now is the homeless issue. And, we're kind of left with, our only tool is to try to, get people on camping violations or some other thing, because it's not illegal to be homeless. It's only illegal for how you happen to be handling it. And so we're doing what we can in that area, but it's complicated. Our problem is that this is what I don't want to see happen, and a couple of issues that happened with the homeless. Number one, Yuba City had some homeless too that lived right underneath the 5th Street Bridge, and they moved them all out. But it was very simple for them to do because they just said go 100 yards that way and then you're in the county, and it was over with. We don't have that. We can't do that. And when you if you arrest somebody or cite them, is what we would actually end up doing, is you cite them for homelessness or camping violation, and you actually get some point you have to move them out of there. You then have to, by law, you have to take care of all their property. And so I don't know if you guys have seen some of those homeless camps down there, but we would have to then collect that and store that and hold it, because otherwise it's a taking of property without jurisprudence. And so we'd have to not only hire a bunch of, or arrange for a bunch of shipping containers to hold it all, and we have to take care of their animals and things like that. But if we do cite them, they don't show up to court, which they won't. And eventually it goes to a warrant, and then they go to court, or we get them into court one way or another, and they get convicted. They're going to end up in jail. And it will cost us millions of dollars if they end up in jail, because we're going to have to fix all the medical things that have been wrong with them for over the longest period of time. It will exponentially run up our medical costs. So we're trying to come up with some type of solution that won't entail ultimately somebody going to jail over it for basically camping violations. That's what it is. And so they've got code enforcement officers working it. They've just hired one, and there's no easy answer, and it's all through the state. I mean, it's not just us. You know, if the civic leaders of Los Angeles or the Bay Area would be jumping for joy if they could get their homeless people all down by the levee or on the other side of the levee, rather than right in the middle of town or in doorways of businesses. So there's just not a simple answer to it, and we're trying to handle it the best that we can. That's all I can say.
My name's Dave Greenwell. I live in Loma Rica. I'm a land surveyor, and I get out there in the brush quite a bit and see what's going on. I'm probably one of the few that still do it. I'm really discouraged at, I know it's budgetary, and I know there's a lot of marijuana growing, but what's the proper way to report? Because I've been to code enforcement. We don't seem like we get any answers. Could you step us through when we see grows, and my understanding is anything outside is illegal right now. If there's an exception, I'd like to know, because, and we were talking about flying helicopters, but right now if you just go on Google Earth, this summer already is on there, and you could just pick them out by the hundreds. You can't go 4 houses in the foothills without seeing a little grow. So I'm just really confused about the proper way to let law enforcement know about the grow. Is it code enforcement? Is it directly to you? And I hate to ask this question, are we safe reporting? Because I'm not real confident that we're safe right now in reporting these grows.
I understand. Thank you for the question, sir. And we too use Google Earth as well to help supplement our investigations and help plot out our plans. What I can tell you is that, I mean, obviously you can reach out to code enforcement, sir, but I would encourage anyone and everyone, and tell every friend that you have that may be discussing it with you over a barbecue or somewhere, is to call the sheriff's department. I absolutely assure you this happens frequently on a number of types of crimes. We will absolutely honor and guard at all costs your anonymity. We would much rather have the information anonymously than not at all. And you just need to clearly say, my name is not important, but there is, I was out and about, and it's, 123 Marysville Road or whatever it is, and give it to us. I promise you that will initiate it getting in the queue and us continuing to take a look at that and doing everything we can to get it addressed and evaluate it. Now again, kind of anything outdoors is illegal. Technically, yes, but what I will tell you is that depending on what it is, it may or may not, and it's very difficult now in the state of California to have something that is illegal in the eyes of California law. Yes, across the board in Yuba County, technically speaking, it may be completely in compliance with California law, but it is illegal by local ordinance, because our ordinance says you can't have any outdoor growing. It may not be a state law violation, and clearly may not reach the threshold of it being something the federal government and meeting the very high threshold that they might have, but it is an issue for them. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. Given our resources, our devotion and our dedication has been at looking at those that are criminal and to writing the search warrants. We're the gun toters. We're the one that have peace officer authority to write search warrants, to roll SWAT teams, to call up other law enforcement personnel to hit a location. If we come across, based on your report to us, and you can always tell us, we'll go check it out. They're assigned to patrol deputies to go around and do that. They know what they're looking for and how to look for it. And if it's found I don't have a crime here, but it is an ordinance violation, be mindful. It is a violation of a local law, an ordinance. But there is no criminal sanction to our ordinance for violating the marijuana laws. It is purely a public nuisance law. There is no criminal sanction at all. The punishment is solely that of being fines. And those we refer to code enforcement to follow up on, and trying to prioritize the use of my peace officers to go after the criminals. So we do compliance checks on a lot of things that don't rise to a crime, and we will refer those to code enforcement. They're the nuisance complaint drivers, if you will. Sir, did I ask your question?
Well, no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We go to code enforcement now, they know about it. It's a code violation. Does anything ever happen? Here's the deal. I ask them, I say, how do you guys get away with it? You got 400 plants. They just tell me, well, they come and hang a tag on the fence and they're gonna be back in 3 days. And, I'm sorry. They'll come out in 3 days and check us out and see if we're legal or whatever. But nothing ever happens.
No, I understand. And that is a good question. I mean, at our Yuba County Board meeting, I suspect that this will be a topic of public communications. And I believe that our code enforcement officials will be there as well. But here's the thing, guys. You see marijuana on anybody's property, federal law violation, state law violation, or just simply a local law violation. Marijuana, folks, again, it's the United States Constitution. Everyone is entitled to due process rights. So the thought that we may be able to just say, marijuana plants, I'm going on the property, and I'm just going to pull it out of the ground. That is not absolute. We cannot do that, other than guaranteeing that we will be sued for civil rights violations. They are entitled to an inspection, to be advised as a grower that you are not in compliance with our local ordinance. They are served a notice of warning to correct the situation, to get in compliance with the ordinance, but they have an opportunity to address the issue first. Then if they don't, and basically snub their nose at code enforcement, then they have to get an abatement warrant signed by a judge. It's very similar to a search warrant, but they have to go through that legal process to then come back with that other legal document that says, now I'm coming onto your property under a judge's direction in order to eradicate these plants for violation of our ordinance. So that's why sometimes these things, and I know frustratingly so, may be a very long time. It's like, well, look, I called and told them, why is it still there? Why is it still there? And again, but people are entitled to due process, and there's steps that have to be followed from a legal perspective. Or to find ourselves violating the 4th, the 5th, the 14th Amendment, you know, as much as we may have some distaste for a marijuana grower, those things apply to them too. So I get it. Does that make sense?
Well, they're nice to me. I mean, for the most part,
Right.
because I'm there doing a job. But I don't understand the process and why you don't see any results. And then you're saying, well, it's budget and manpower. And it just seems like the whole thing's hopeless. But one thing I would suggest is hang the tag on the gate and say we're going to be back in 3 days, even if you don't come. Because a lot of them will take care of their own plants just by the tag being on the gate. So
Right. No, I get it.
it's
You know,
a
and
cheap-
certainly is.
cheap solution.
Yeah, are there potential means for us to, you know, certainly step back? And I'll be honest with you, in light of what happened last week, these types of events certainly do cause everyone to step back and be ultra critical and scrutinizing of our processes as efficient as they can be? Has it gotten sloppy? Are we tracking things? And I believe that across the board in the county, all of that's being looked at. And sir, please, I don't want you to take that I'm just saying is, hey, it's budgetary things, we don't care. We are as incensed as you guys all are about what's out there. It sickens us as well. The reality is that we, with the resources we have and the amount of resources that we can be able to pull in, we hit as many of them as we possibly can. The unfortunate reality every grow season is that others that were in the queue that probably a warrant was already in the works, they end up harvesting it before we actually were able to get to that one in order to execute the warrant.
Another issue that bugs me is code enforcement will have $400,000 penalties against these people, and they'll settle for $15,000. I don't understand that whole process. It's like they're just buying them all, and $15,000 is nothing to these guys that's got 400 plants.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that for a number of them, yes. Sir, and again, that is a question that I think it'd be inappropriate for me to speak for code enforcement or decisions that, because all of these appeals are heard in front of the board, and I think it's appropriate for them to respond to any of these pending cases that have been out there. Could we certainly use the revenue if anybody paid? I'll say yes. So.
I just wanted to update a little bit of City of Live Oak for some of the Yuba County people that haven't been keeping up. But I, as a concerned citizen, on May 2nd, 2017, I attended a City of Live Oak had a PowerPoint presentation regarding marijuana, cannabis, basically a study of economic growth by cannabis. I didn't attend the May 17th meeting, and Diane Hodges was supposed to go on vacation. She canceled and attended that meeting as a council member. It was at that meeting that Diane motioned that we keep the existing marijuana ordinance and ban marijuana grows less, just 6 plants indoors. So the 3 that voted, it just took the plan, kicked marijuana to the curb that day, okay? Diane Hodges, Steve Alvarado, and Lakvir Kag were the 3 votes versus Jason Banks, mayor, and Alex Tika, vice mayor. So then following day, which was planned months ahead, was it was a Sutter Yuba Pathways had a marijuana impact on youth, and it was an excellent program by Melissa Jeller, I think her name is. But I'm telling you that we should everybody should thank Diane Hodges, Steve Alvarado, and Lakvir Kag for kicking it out of Live Oak that day.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, my name is Roger Morgan, founder of the Take Back America campaign, and I've been engaged in drug prevention work for about 20 years and probably studied more about marijuana than most people. First of all, I'd like to thank you for what you do. You guys are absolutely overwhelmed by the problem that should not exist at the local level. I think we all are. If the federal government had done its job, we wouldn't have to be talking about this now. So I'm going to tell you that as bad as it is now, when Prop 64 kicks in 4.5 months, and then we have marijuana potentially in every house, there's no way to control it. 6 plants, grown hydroponically, you can get 24 pounds of pot. That's a lot of marijuana. So we're going to have a problem that, in my opinion, is irreversible. That on top of what the state is doing with their medical marijuana program, it's a joke. They never talk about the harms. I'm going to tell you honestly, from what I know about marijuana, that it can destroy this country. And California today produces 12 times more marijuana than we consume locally. We supply 60 to 70% of the U.S. market. We become a cartel. It's like federal law didn't even exist. So what I've been doing, which I would suggest to all of you, with your leadership, the Sheriff's Association, I think, could do a lot for this, but I've been hounding Washington. They get tired of the squeaky voice, but early in the last regime, I was asked to go back and talk to the Department of Justice. They said, we hear from the other guys, we never hear from you guys. Well, the other guys have a lot of money. They've got a lot of lobbyists. The congressmen always say, hey, we never hear from you guys. We're working class people. We're retired. We're not getting paid for doing this. So what concerns me today about the Republican Party, I mean, Democrats had a plank that they want to legalize marijuana. Actually, they want to legalize all drugs because George Soros is behind that effort. Republican Party needs to step up and put this on a platform that we want to go back to prohibition. We want federal law enforced. We should have a complete ban. We should have a complete ban on outdoor cultivation, indoors or outdoors, and dispensaries should be gone. If the state wants to offer marijuana for medicinal purposes, let them do it through public agencies. They can have one cultivation site if they're dumb enough to do that. But if you take the economic incentive out of this, even the state won't have the ability to do that. And the state so far has collected probably $1 billion already in taxing and laundering drug money. It's all illegal. It's like federal law doesn't exist in California. So what I've been doing, I finally called the Department of Justice asking to talk to Sessions. I think Sessions is the greatest thing that's happened to us potentially, if he's backed by the Commander-in-Chief. I got the names of the 3 people on his marijuana committee. I got the phone number for one of them, named Steve Wood. I called him and got his voicemail, and then about 9:30 one night, I was looking at all the crap going on, and I called him again. I got his voicemail at 12:30 in the morning. I didn't expect him to answer, obviously, but he got even with me by calling me back at 5 o'clock in the morning. But we've had several conversations, and I have encouraged him to get some people to come to California that are engaged in this mission. I think we're too far from the East Coast where all of these decisions are made. I think the people that are advising Trump are scary. Got Dana Rohrabacher, pro-pot, McClintock, my guy. I live in Placer County. Pro-pot 64. This can't happen. The Republican Party is going to have to step up. It isn't even on the radar. And this drug, I mean, we got 144 people dying every day of drug overdose in this country, that almost all of them started with marijuana. You want to stop the heroin opiate problem, then you got to go back and stop the marijuana problem. And if you want to stop the homeless problem and the addiction problem and the crime problem, you got to stop the drug problem. So if you're not aware, you guys in the audience, you can call the White House. Do they have a comment line? It's an easy number. It's 202-456-1111. Leave them a comment. Just say, Mr. President, we want you to enforce the law. And if you look at presidents in the past, when Reagan was in office, he cut drug use in half. When Obama was in office, it doubled. Obama reports to George Soros. I would tell you also that if we don't stop this between now and 2018 and we get Gavin Newsom as our next governor, we will be ruled by out-of-state billionaires with George Soros at the helm. You can kiss California goodbye. So put some pressure on the president to give local law enforcement some help. I mean, I can't believe the job that you guys are doing, and from the bottom of my heart, I'm most appreciative. And I'm so glad about your deputies making it. So keep on doing a great work.
Okay, I actually forgot my question. However, let me come up with another one. No, I remember it. I want to make one comment, and that is there is a bit of confusion in my mind and maybe in people's minds who have gone and talked to code enforcement, and that is there seems to be sort of a circle of you tell us, we tell them, they tell him, you tell me, and what you said, come to you or go to you or report it to you, was not what we were told earlier in the week, which is basically, I was told, as were a group of us by Jeremy Strang, that the incidents of reporting this year are significantly down. That may be the case, and that's because more and more people, and I've talked to many people individually and pleaded with them to please report these incidents, and they are afraid, they are intimidated, they basically just shrug their shoulders and say nothing's going to happen. That's not the answer.
Which county are you talking?
Yuba. I live in Dobbins, 2 miles from where the sheriffs were shot. I'm very, very shaken by that. And the other thing I wanted, so that's a concern, and that is, if you tell us now, please, the correct order, especially if we think there is a criminal offense.
Technically speaking, either way it can happen. There isn't a straight funnel and a straight, linear path that this is the only way that it can work. You certainly can report it to the code enforcement officer, and I'm giving you an invitation that you can report it to us. And between us and code enforcement, we are constantly crossing back and forth with each other of, this one has got to be a nuisance issue that's being addressed. We're looking at this one as a criminal case. If you go to the main page of the Sheriff's Office website, right, there is an opportunity there to send emails to us, and you can simply just say, hey, and folks, we're not going to backtrack your email address to figure out who you are. If you're just saying, look, I wish to remain anonymous, don't even put your name on it, but I believe there's a very significant grow happening at, fill in the blank. I would estimate there's, much information as you have. If you want contact back and you're absolutely wanting to remain anonymous, I promise you we will guard that. I received 3 phone calls today from folks that I know in the hills that said, hey, I want to pass this on to you. And I know that in the past they have said, and we honor it, it's like, your name's showing up nowhere. And I will always ask folks, are you okay with me giving your first name and your phone number to one of my lead marijuana people? If you say no, then I won't give it. And then they can hear it. I got an anonymous information. We need to look at this site. Okay, and I'm not trying to confuse you anymore. Clearly, code enforcement could be looking at it, and it can be routed to our direction, or you can report it to us. We are the 2 main entities that you ought to send this to. Periodically, somebody may send something to the County of Yuba through the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. And Donna or Rochelle will then send it to us or to Jeremy saying, hey, this came in through the board comments, and you're the guys that have to look at it, and we'll pick it up from there.
Okay, thank you. And then the second part of that question is, this gentleman referred to the posting of the, that we need to get on your property, because obviously code enforcement are not SWAT team, and so I understand that completely. I was under the impression it was a 24-hour notice rather than 3 days. So is it 3 days or 24 hours?
You mean as far as
when they're going to return? Or is there, my understanding, and it could be incorrect, is once they've got that posting, that within 24 hours, code enforcement will be coming back with a sheriff's officer. But this gentleman was referring to 3 days.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at my chief of detectives in the back for the timeline. Sorry. What? 24 hours. 24 hours, okay.
24 hours.
There it is.
Okay.
You need me to post for you? I'll do it.
The other question that I have, and I think it's on the minds of a lot of people who live in the foothills, and they may not want to ask it directly, and I'm not inferring anything with this question, but I am concerned that the grow that took place on the property in Dobbins, the one where the actual sheriffs were shot, that grow was had been questionable and questioned in 2016. And because of Heidi Lepp and her husband Eddie and their little dog Toto, all of a sudden, it's like we're all thinking the same thing, and that is then why are they up there again? I mean, that's a year. Now, are they under the 215 thing where they've got 800 people that all have a prescription? And I know you don't know the answer to this, but just out of curiosity, Heidi Lepp, I just happened to go on her Facebook page about 3 days ago, just out of curiosity, and I could go on any of her friends and look them up and listen to all their little, village stories and what they're doing and how great they are. Her entire Facebook friends page has now been closed down. I'm just wondering if there's something going on that she's suddenly going dark, because she's not a person that likes to be out of the limelight.
That I can't speak to. What I can speak to is that I will tell you that in July of last year, we did in fact write up a criminal search warrant at that exact site where the original call for service originated that resulted in the shooting, which was on a different parcel from where the call started. I will tell you that it was written up from a criminal thing. That was our belief system going into it. Upon descending upon that garden last year, it was found completely 215 compliant in the eyes of the state of California, and that it was a properly regulated or managed collective with a number of different individuals. It met the criteria under California law that they were not committing a criminal offense. Clearly, they're violating the local ordinance, but it was not a crime. So our search warrant basically got returned with, we don't have a crime. We thought there was, there wasn't.
That might be the problem. In so many of these grows, that might really be a problem right there. And that is that they are violating the ordinance, but they're hovering under their thousands of prescriptions that are written for those individuals who are all using it for medical marijuana. So that might be hard to fight.
I would venture to guess that of the multiple of grows across the entire expanse of Yuba County, that the vast majority of them, because they're very good at it, and they've gotten better as years have gone by, of getting themselves of, hey, we're well within the parameters of 64 or 215, and no doubt, I mean, you can see it everywhere. I mean, you see it in Google Earth, that they're completely snubbing their nose at the ordinance. So you end up with, don't have a crime, but we have a nuisance abatement issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, I'm Buck Weckman, founder of Yuba County FACT, Families Against Cannabis Trafficking. So some of you are on there. I would like to say that I'm going to have a short statement, but then I do have some questions. They may be a little bit rhetorical, but I'm not up here to speak forever. When I have spoke before high school kids in civic classes, I always introduced myself as the most hated man in Yuba County by the marijuana community. And I'm proud of that title. But if anything I've said or done as of late to cause any type of anger feelings towards me by the law enforcement community, I won't apologize for them, but I am sorry that I've done that, because that is the last thing I want. I know how angry I was when those deputies got shot. I can't even understand how angry you are. So I'm here to say that one thing, I'm not a public servant, so I can say what I want. You guys, and Randy Fletcher here, a supervisor, the only supervisor here, you guys got some restrictions on you. Well, I don't. And so I felt that, some things need to be said. And I'm really glad you got up and told the people about your difficulties. Because a lot of people outside of this room and outside of your organization, whatever, has some blame into what happened. So we need to recognize that. So I guess my questions for you is, I think, and you can either answer none of these or it's just rhetorical. I believe a resolution from our Board of Supervisors of a state of emergency concerning the marijuana incident is in order. And first admitting that we have some problems we can't handle. Okay, what comes out of that? I don't know yet. I would kind of like to get your feeling on whether you would support that type of resolution. You know, it needs to be reworded or whatever. We recently hired a homeless coordinator. Okay? I don't see why we can't work for something like that with extra funding coming from I don't care where, okay, to take some of the workload off of you and Jeremy Strang, the code enforcement officer. I would like to know if you would support, like I would, an additional 1% sales tax for Yuba County, dedicated to law enforcement. I'll start tomorrow if I have to. So, I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you, Sheriff Durfor.
Do you want me to attempt to respond to any of them? You might have to go back over them again. The first is the state of emergency. I tell you what, and I anticipate, Buck, that you're going to be at the meeting tomorrow, the board meeting, as will I. And I would like to hear more about what your intent or your vision of the outcome of that document would be. And I'm all ears to flesh that out and see what leverage or benefit that poses. As far as the 1 cent or some form of a sales tax, folks, let me tell you, I'd like to address that briefly. Given the dire economic conditions that we have been in, and I will tell you that over the last 9 years, as you heard me say in my opening comments, you know, the county administrator and I have talked a number of times, and certainly the concept of we have got to get added revenues coming in. And if I'm at fault of anything, I will tell you guys over the last several years that I have told him, under no circumstances will I use the office of sheriff when we are experiencing the worst economic times we have seen in God knows how long. Everyone in this community is hurting badly in their personal finances, losing their job, struggling to keep their home, and I will not, as a resident, lifelong resident of Yuba County, and as the sheriff of this county, put my name on raising people's taxes even more. Because I happen to agree with you, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm one of those guys, like I'd venture to guess a number of you here, that I'm reading down to it, and almost regardless of what it's for, you want to tax us more? I'm voting no. And I stop reading after that most of the time, and maybe that's shame on me. But guys, I am telling you, I'm standing in front of you now, and I'm pitching the concept to you. I'm not saying yet that it is happening, but I do believe we're at the end of the road. And I'm willing to eat what I have been saying the last several years and actually carry the water and carry the torch in front of you in trying to explain to you, we need to do this or we're in dire straits here. You may not like the commentary of where we are sitting with public safety in our department right now, but I guarantee you that over the horizon, it could look a whole heck of a lot worse than it is now. And I am not in favor of taxing you more. You take a breath in this state, you get taxed. I get it. But the reality is, guys, is I don't think we have a whole lot of other options. And it is probably the most expeditious way to try to shore up revenues, but it needs to be absolutely committed 100% that this is for public safety. And in the rhetorical conversations that I've had with some of the board members and with county administrator, is that I am willing to get behind this and eat my position that I've had the last several years, but only if there's some kind of a sunset on it, that this isn't going into perpetuity, that at some point in time Yuba County starts recovering and getting its legs underneath this economically, that this drops off. How that takes shape, but I will be honest with you guys, I think it's a very real possibility that next year you're going to see such a proposal being presented to the voters of Yuba County, because, I will look every one of you dead in the eye and telling you, folks, we need to do this. Because we are running out of options, and from a public safety perspective, we're having a heck of a time keep maintaining an adequate level of service to you guys. And the results could be devastating service reductions, and some things just saying, folks, we just don't come to that anymore. And I think that's a horrible service. And in my 10.5 years of being your sheriff, I have fought mightily that I still, maybe I'm old school, the belief that you call, that you deserve to have one of your deputies come to your doorstep to hear what your issue is and to work to resolve that. But we're having to really take a hard look at, guys, prioritizing what our public safety folks are going to. And the reality is, just the latter part of the week prior to the Tuesday shooting event. My undersheriff and I, as well as the operations captain, were talking. At my direction, you need to identify some service reductions that we think are palatable, because we have to seriously take a hard look at what we want our men and women wearing a uniform in Yuba County working on. And reality, guys, is without the tax, it's likely you're going to see over the horizon here not too long from now of us just saying there's certain crimes, guys, that we have identified that are maybe fairly low-hanging fruit, but if you want a report taken, it'll be taken telephonically, and or you're filing it online, or you're coming into the office, or you can mail it in. I don't like that, but the reality is we've got to prioritize what we want them focused on. And so as far as the tax thing, I answer your question. I'm behind it. We don't have many options. In fact, the way I see it right now, we don't have any other option other than to approach it from that standpoint.
Thank you.
My name's Philip Steck. I'm a retired military Air Force officer, and in Sacramento County, they have a reserve deputy force. It's an air squadron where retired military members can volunteer their services to help the sheriff's department in transporting prisoners and stuff like that. Do you have any type of system like that?
Yeah, we have the Yuba Sutter Aerial Squadron, and it services both of us. It answers to Steve and me, and Fred Young and some of the area pilots you might know. When I said earlier that we have airplanes, we don't have airplanes. They have airplanes. They own them, right. And they're very helpful. I think there's about 25 guys and girls.
The ranks are deeper now than I've seen them in a long time.
Right. Their current president is a guy by the name of Fred Young. He's a rotor pilot and fixed wing. Right. And he's been very active in getting basically anybody that owns an airplane or has a pilot's license to get them involved in the aerial squadron. And they're the ones that do all the flying for us. They on all emergency flying, flyovers for marijuana, things like that, search and rescue, and on some occasions even prisoner transport if it has to be done for a special reason or quickly or something like that. They do all that stuff. So check them out. I think they're on the internet. I think they are. But
we both have liaisons that are assigned to
right.
The Aero Squadron. And
okay.
Sir, before we leave, I will give you my card. And
okay.
If you want to reach out, I'll have my guy. I'm not sure where you get the application, quite honestly. I think you can get them from our office. But Fred's so great at recruitment, I should hire him for deputies. We'll make sure you get connected. We'd love to have you on board.
Okay, and I remember 20 years ago when I was working up in Nevada County, we used to get helicopters coming up from Mather all the time. I think they were the old dust-off medical choppers, right. And they used to, fly up and go into, North San Juan and all those places, spotting more marijuana, growths and stuff like that. But I assume that's not being done anymore.
It is.
Oh, is it being done? Okay.
Every year.
Well, yeah, it's something that helped back then 20 years ago.
Oh, no, as some of the previous questions were, it's been a great asset.
Would you please speak in the microphone, please?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
We still do it every year, and it is still a great asset and a resource, and still very beneficial to this day.
Yeah, I'm Richard Campbell. I'd like to get back to the Oroville Dam issue. And I've skied that lake for 25 years after it was built. And that's not an emergency spillway, that's a boat. That's a boat parking lot. For that dam to be full like that the second week in February was suicidal for everybody.
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
Suicidal. It should have never been full like that.
I know, but what if it should have been full?
Yeah,
other
I
than-
said it shouldn't have been full. The
Okay.
spillway should have been in operation long before the second week in February.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you something you didn't mention once. Is the fact that it had been raining for 3 days up in Truckee, and Portola was flooding. And anytime it rains on the summit with a historic snowpack, you're going to get a lot of water down here, and Oroville Dam won't protect you if you're not working that spillway right. There was with 180,000 cubic feet coming into that dam, and you're standing there wondering what you're going to do without a spillway, is suicidal. That spillway should have been in operation, and I understand it was shut down for 3 days to evacuate fish. So who explains that one? And you're never going to get an evacuation down here because people are going to die in their car waiting to be evacuated. It's totally incompetent, and I feel sorry for people. It happened in '97. You'd think DWR would have learned their lesson in '97 because the same thing happened. And once again, it happened last year. It's totally irresponsible on the state of California and DWR, and there's no names or anybody responsible for that spillway. When that kind of water is coming in, and they've got access to weather reports just like you and I do. And when you've got a snowpack like that, you usually look at what's going to happen on the summit, because that's where the snow is. And it's on its way downhill. As far as Oroville Dam to Sacramento has got a 235-foot elevation downhill into Sacramento. So you've even got a further force of water going towards Sacramento.
You know, as far as the comments on point with what you're talking about, sir, is there's been a series of public meetings that DWR has been holding throughout the kind of Butte, Yuba, Sutter area. I don't know when there may be another one upcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that in Marysville they have been having them. Stephanie, are you aware of an upcoming one? Yeah, just at the Caltrans building on B Street in Marysville, but you might be alert to that. But the honest answer of releases, not release, and why the 3 days, I mean, really, the DWR folks have been pretty open and taken a lot of very tough questions at those meetings. I've been to a couple of them in Marysville, so that is the meeting that I would love for you to get connected to
Yeah.
have that addressed.
Well, it's just total incompetence because leading up to February, there was torrential rain. And DWR and everybody wants to rely on it, the snow level. Well, the snow level, you were probably 2 days off of taking Oroville Dam and blowing it right off the mountain right there because of the rainfall up on the summit with a historical snowpack like it was. And my second question is, as law enforcement, you should never have to, you should always have what you need to uphold the law in the county. You should never have to want for more officers, or you're short of this or short of that. You should always have everything. I would be willing to pay assessment on my property taxes to give you the money you need as long as it's going to you.
First of all, a thank you. I live in Sutter County in the little town of Sutter. I wanted to thank you, Sheriff Parker, for your commitment to the Second Amendment and your generous interpretation in granting CCW permits, which I've availed myself to. So thank you for that. I was not here last summer when you were here, but I wanted to thank you for that. And my question, and I'm not quite sure how to say this, but me personally, I'm just appalled at this nonsense I hear about law enforcement agencies being prohibited by law to not cooperate, and illegal immigrants, aliens that are criminals, and you know, your response to the sanctuary city business and harboring criminals and all that, what can or could be done, and how you feel about that. I shake my head. I'm appalled at that nonsense.
Well, Sutter County and Yuba County both are not sanctuary counties. And so at least we don't have the political pressure to not cooperate with the feds on a local level. Now, the state is a separate matter, of course, and they pass various acts that makes it difficult, and there's some things that we can do and we can't do, but in general, we have a very good ongoing relationship with the feds and always have, so we don't have a problem with it.
So from your standpoint, you're going to continue to cooperate with the feds?
Well, yeah, I'm not stopping. No, we're
Thank you.
we're doing, we vet everything that we do. We're legal, so we're good.
I haven't heard recently in the news, and I'm concerned about that Yuba College female student. I live in Live Oak. What is the latest? Was she murdered and thrown in the river? And is there a suspect in regard to her? So do you know what the latest is in regard to that student?
Are you talking about which case now?
The Yuba College student.
Hmm?
She was...
Yeoman?
Yeah, she lives in Gridley.
Right.
And her car was found on Pennington in Live Oak. And then one of the residents of Live Oak found the body in the river. So I was wondering what the latest is. Was she murdered? Or was she on drugs and went into the river of her own accord? So I was wondering if you know the latest in that regard.
That's an open case. I don't talk about open cases.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll wait to hear what.
I'm sorry. I just don't talk about open cases.
Yeah. Okay. What the second point is the cleanup of the river from the homeless. What is the status of that?
Well, I think the last I heard, the Board of Supervisors were planning on putting dumpsters down there to have the homeless pick up after themselves and not leave so much trash laying around. We'll see if it works. It won't harm anything, and so we'll see. But the county of Sutter has spent a considerable amount of money already down there cleaning up after it. I think they spent how much was it? 200,000, 300,000. And the contractor that they got said it cost like $1 million to really clean it up. What I've advised them, told them about, is that if you really want to clean out this area down here and help knock down some of your homeless issues in the river bottoms, is you have to get all the brush out of here, all the berry vines, because that's where they build. They burrow in there and they make home sites and things like that. And there's an enormous amount of state bureaucracy that you have to go through to remove bushes and scrub trees out of the river bottoms. But we're doing it. I think it's going to take 1.5 years to do, but we're doing it. Yeah, I mean, you run into one elderberry beetle and it stops you in your tracks. Or you come across, God forbid you come across some bones or something like that, where you might have a burial site or, it just stops work. It stops whatever you're doing. So I think the answer to it is to try to make that particular area not as attractive to the homeless. And that's what we're going to concentrate on doing.
Okay, let's have two more questions, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay, my name's Thomas Burns. I just spent about $6,000 on DMV fees alone. And, you know, I hear the complaints that there's no money. And then we just raised our gas taxes through the roof, and on and on and on and on it goes. Where's all our money going? If you're not getting it, who's getting it?
I don't make that decision, but you know, and that's the problem with all the whole issue about the special tax for law enforcement. Law enforcement, we're paid out of the general fund, and the general fund is manipulable. And the problem is that you might have the greatest board of supervisors in the world, and you get an extra 1% of money coming in, and they devote it to law enforcement. And then, you know, 8 years from now, 10 years from now, 12, 16, whatever it takes, pretty soon they just take money away from other things, and pretty soon you're reliant now on that extra 1%, and it's not doing you net good on anything. So sometimes it's these don't have very easy answers to a lot of this stuff.
And I certainly can't speak to the breakdown. I mean, that's why we have financial managers. I wasn't very smart at math, so I became a cop. Just kidding. Anyway, sometimes when you look at what you're paying in certain taxes, you really need to get down into actually how that is distributed out, and it is many times what you believe the percentage of that fine or that payment. It's a minuscule percentage that actually gets filtered off towards us. I mean, it might be shocked at it in the standpoint that it is like, well, that was like 0.5% of that actually went to law enforcement. I mean, so, and I'm not saying it's necessarily the DMV thing, but a lot of these taxes, when you look at it, sometimes it is very dismal of what actually gets scraped off that comes our direction. So that's sometimes where's the devil's in the details of the distribution of the monies.
Okay, one short question from Tom, and then I'm going to let Randy Fletcher talk for a minute.
Yeah, my name is Tom Blossfield, and I want to make clear, first of all, I am not a member of Mensa because I moved back to Yuba City from Oregon 5 days after the evacuation, so that proves that point. Is there any kind of warning system being geared up? Can they come through our TVs or computers for a siren or something like that, being there is no way to let us know at 3 or 4 in the morning to get out?
We're looking at something right now. It's a what do you call those hailers, those military things? But they're directional. It costs like $500,000. We'd probably need about 4 of them, and we're just starting to look at those things right now.
Okay, thank you.
I will tell you, sir, and members of the public, you know, I don't know if I can speak to what you have on this side of the river, but we have a code red system in Yuba County. And there is a means now where we are based on a GIS system to hard lines in your home we can grid out an area and then dump a canned message to all of those. It recycles through if it's a missed call or it went to a voice machine, and it'll go back through and it prints out a whole report. This many calls, this is how long it took, this is how many redials there were to try to reach them. Now there's an added component to it, and shamefully I don't have it with me here tonight. But it's something that we can get to you. It could go to the county OES site. But there is a means for any and all of your electronic devices, whether it's your cell phone, maybe it's your iPad or your desktop or laptop, and you can, and as many devices you have, you can sign up through that. But you have to kind of do a little proactive effort, but that message will dump to your cell phone. So you can register the cell at this, and as many in your household as you want. It's not like one per household, that you can register your mobile phones to also receive those messages.
Okay, but that's Yuba County. I'm in Sutter County.
Yeah.
We have the Nixle program. If you look up Nixle on the internet, it's very simple.
Okay, thank you.
And you plug your cell phone numbers in there, because it only works on cell phones. It doesn't work on hardline because it only sends out messages. You plug you don't have to give your name and all that kind of stuff. Put the phone numbers you want called, message. And on any emergency that we have, it immediately messages all those numbers all at once.
Good, thank you very much.
Okay, let's give these guys a hand. We appreciate you being here tonight.